Hi everyone. In this quick tutorial, we'll show you how to set up LDAP authentication in Splunk using Active Directory for secure user access. Before we jump into the setup, let's first understand what LDAP is and how it works. LDAP is a protocol used to access and manage information in a directory. It helps systems like computers and apps find and verify user details. For example, Active Directory uses LDAP to manage user accounts and access permissions. The LDAP process begins when a user tries to log into an application by entering their credentials, username, and password. The application then sends a request to the LDAP server to check if the user exists in the directory and if the credentials are valid. The LDAP server searches its directory to find the user's record, verifies the entered credentials against what is stored, and then responds. If the credentials match, the application grants access to the user. If they don't, access is denied. This flow ensures that the system correctly authenticates and authorizes users based on the information in the LDAP directory. Before we begin, make sure you have the following prerequisites. 1. Admin access to your Splunk instance. 2. Credentials for your LDAP server. 3. A basic understanding of your LDAP directory structure, including base DN and bind DN. 4. Network connectivity between Splunk and your LDAP server. Let's go through a checklist to ensure everything is in place. First, make sure you have admin access to your Splunk instance. Without administrative privileges, you won't be able to configure LDAP settings or manage authentication. As you can see, I have admin role assigned to my user. Gather your LDAP server details: hostname, admin username, and password for the account used to connect. These credentials allow Splunk to bind to the LDAP server for authentication. Currently, I'm using Microsoft Server 2019 as my LDAP server. Understanding your LDAP directory structure is critical for configuring Splunk correctly. Think of it as a hierarchical tree where all user and group information is organized. Now let's go to Microsoft Server 2019 Active Directory. Now we are on Windows Server. First, click the Start button to open the Start menu. Then, type Server Manager. Once you see Server Manager in the search results, click on it to launch the application. Now on top right corner, select Tools and select Active Directory Users and Computers. At the root of this structure is the base DN, which serves as the starting point for directory searches. For this setup, we'll create a dedicated organizational unit, OU, called Splunk in the LDAP directory. This OU will act as a container for all Splunk-related data. Within the Splunk OU, we'll create another OU named Users. This will contain all the user accounts specific to Splunk. We'll also create an OU named Groups inside Splunk. This will house all the Splunk-specific groups. These groups can help control permissions and access levels for Splunk users. Now I will create users in the Users OU called test.user1. Later we'll give user role to this user in Splunk. Now similarly, I will create two more users called test.pow1 and test.admin1, and later we'll give power and admin roles in Splunk. Now I will create a group called Splunk Admins in the Groups OU, and we'll add all the admin users to this group, which makes user management easy. Now similarly, I will create two more groups called Splunk Power Users and Splunk Users, and later we'll add power users and users to these groups. With this structure, it becomes easy to manage Splunk users and their roles independently of other LDAP entries. Finally, verify that there is network connectivity between your Splunk instance and the LDAP server. Let's go to our Splunk server backend and try to ping the LDAP server by using the following command: ping followed by LDAP server IP. As you can see, I am able to successfully transmit and receive data with 0% packet loss. Similarly, we will also test the LDAP server port accessibility using the command telnet LDAP server IP and port 389. As you can see, it's successfully connected. As we have all prerequisites ready, now let's start configuring LDAP server with Splunk. First, log into Splunk web interface and click on Settings and select Authentication Methods. Now, under External, select LDAP and select Configure Splunk to use LDAP. Now, click on New LDAP button on top right corner. In LDAP strategy name, enter name of your choice and enter host as your LDAP server DNS or IP, and in port enter 389 if you are not using SSL, and enter 636 if you are using secure LDAP. I am not using secure LDAP, so I will enter 389. In bind DN, Enter the distinguished name of your admin user in LDAP server. Log into your LDAP server and open Server Manager and select Tools and select ADC Edit. Expand your domain and select CN equals users. Here you can find your admin account. Right-click on it and select Properties. And in Attribute Editor, scroll down till you find attribute called Distinguished Name. Double-click on it and copy the value and come back to the Splunk LDAP settings page and paste it in bind DN. In bind DN password, enter your LDAP server admin user password and enter it once again by confirming it. In user-based DN, go back to the LDAP server and open ADSI Edit and expand the Splunk OU and right-click on Properties and scroll down till you find the attribute Distinguished Name. Copy the value and come back to Splunk and paste it in user-based DN. User-based filter, you can leave it empty, and for username attribute, enter SAM account name, which contains the username attribute in Active Directory. For real name attribute, you can enter a CN, which represents the common name. You leave email attribute and group mapping attribute as empty, as they are not required for now. In group settings, for group-based DN, go back to LDAP server and open ADSI Edit, and right-click on Grops OU under Splunk, and select Scroll Down till you find the distinguished name. Double-click on it and copy the value. Come back to the Splunk and paste it in group-based DN. Static group search filter, you can leave it empty. For group name attribute, enter CN. And for static member attribute, enter member. And remanning settings, you can leave it empty and scroll down and click Save. You can see the success message. Once LDAP strategy is successfully configured, you can find the Actions column and select Map Groups in the Actions column. Now select Splunk Admins Group and assign admin role, and save it. Similarly, do the same for Splunk Power Users and Splunk Users Group. That's it, the configuration is done. Now let's see the demo of LDAP authentication. Now let's log out of Splunk and log in again using the test.admin1 account. You can see we successfully logged in using Active Directory user account. Now click on Settings and select Users. In the users list, you can see all the users from Splunk OU is imported here with specific roles. That's it for our LDAP setup guide in Splunk. If you found this helpful, share, comment, and leave any questions below. Thanks for watching.